It's great to be back in Krakow. This is my fifth visit, I think, to Krakow, fifth or sixth. So I have a special kind of attachment to Krakow. My son has a company here, or the development team for his company is here, and he lived here for over 2 months and just returned home a couple weeks ago. So it's good to be back in Poland. Last night, I was at the speaker dinner with the speakers, and we were saying, oh, are you ready for your talk, and do you have your slides done? And they said, oh, Don, you don't have to prepare because you've done this 100 times, and it's really easy. And I thought, yeah, it is pretty easy. So I decided to shake it up a little bit and add a degree of difficulty. So I threw my presentation away. And this morning, I got up and started over, and I redid the whole thing. So I thought, well, let's shake it up a little bit and see how it works. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to do 3 talks in one, because I thought one was too easy, and 45 minutes is too long. So I'm going to do 3 talks in one, and this is the first time. I've not done any practice. So I'm going to try to up the level with Alex and the other speakers and see if I can do it. So the 3 topics I'm going to talk about are, 1, dealing with failure. We had a rather interesting talk about failure the other night, and there are very different opinions about failure and if it's a good thing or a bad thing. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. The second topic is raising money for your startup. And we just heard from Ravi a pretty good presentation on that. And there were a couple yesterday about raising money. And then the third topic is mobile explosion and what's going on with the shift from PCs to mobile devices. And that's a pretty interesting topic that we could spend a lot of time on, but I'm just going to hit the highlights. So, in my experience, most books, a couple hundred pages, could be explained in 1 or 2 pages. Like I could explain a 200-page book in a 2-page blog post, and you'd know everything that you needed to know. And I think these 1-hour presentation lectures on stage could also be done in about 10 minutes. The rest of it is all fluff and things you don't really need to know. I wasn't talking about you, Alex. Does anyone know what this is? This is a gold processing plant. And I don't know if you know how gold is mined, but it takes 30 tons of rocks and dirt and stuff to get 1 ounce of gold. So you're sifting through all of this crap to get 1 ounce of gold. So what I'm going to try to do here is eliminate all the fluff and all the stuff and just focus on the golden nuggets and just talk about golden nuggets. So in this talk, only golden nuggets, hopefully no crap or minimal crap if I can make that happen. So here's my first golden nugget. Don't fear failure. Learn from it. That's a pretty important thing. As an entrepreneur, you're going to fail many, many times. And you have to keep recovering from that failure, learning from it, and moving forward. So that's the very first lesson. Don't fear failure, just learn from it. Does anyone know what this is? Do you know this product? Do you have this product in Poland, WD-40? It's a very old product. It's been around forever. But do you know what WD-40 means? The WD is water dispersion, and the 40, it's the 40th formulation of this product before they actually got it to market. So they failed 39 times trying to get this right, and the 40th one actually worked. And starting a company is sort of like that. You'll try 20 or 30 or 40 different things until you find one that works. Angry Birds. Everybody knows Angry Birds, right? But what you probably don't know is that Angry Birds was the 52nd game that they built. Rovio is the company, and I think Peter has been here and talked at one of the conferences. But they tried 51 games before Angry Birds, and you've probably never heard of any of them because they weren't successful. So the key is, as an entrepreneur, keep trying, keep iterating, keep moving until you get it right. Does anyone know what this, Windows 7, right? So this is another example of if you don't get it right, just keep going. So perhaps Windows 8 will be the one where they get it right, I hope. And some of you may not know me, but I worked for Microsoft for many years before I came to Google. So this is just a little inside joke with me. Here's the second golden nugget. There's a very fine line between a brilliant visionary and a delusional fool. As a matter of fact, sometimes you can't even see where the line is. Because if you're trying to do really amazing things, visionary things, it appears that it's crazy, insane, impossible. You can't do it. So that line between being a visionary and being delusional is a very, very fine line. And that's okay. Embrace that. And sometimes it's the same person that's a visionary and delusional. So Steve Jobs was a visionary when he created Apple Computer back in 1976 or something like that. But the same Steve Jobs that started Apple Computer also started Next Computer, which was a complete failure. He was delusional. He thought he could build a computer that was 4 times the cost of the Mac and that people would want to buy it. Well, it didn't work. And then the same Steve Jobs came back to Apple a second time and was once again a visionary. So that's something to remember. Don't worry about getting things right every time, because it's not going to happen. So here's one of my favorite quotes. Failure is not an option. It's a requirement to get to breakthrough success. You have to take tremendous risk in order to get tremendous reward and a breakthrough. The first time I ever heard this phrase, failure is not an option, is when the Apollo rocket program in the 60s. And the director of that program was famous for saying, failure is not an option. And what he meant by that was he would do everything. That team would try everything until they found the solution that worked, and they would never give up. Failure was not an option. So that was a pretty interesting thing. But then when I got into business and started looking around, I discovered that failure is not an option means very different things to different people. At a startup, failure is not an option means you'll try 40 or 50 things until you find the one thing that works. You're just going to keep going until it works. But at big companies, really big companies, when they say failure is not an option, what they mean is if you fail, you're fired. So failure is not an option. And what that does is it causes you to not take risk, because you don't want to take a risk that you're going to fail because you don't want to be fired. So they always take the safe approach. They always make little incremental improvements. They never get to breakthrough kind of success because the risks are too high. And in startups, it's just the opposite. You have to take great risks. There are no incremental improvements. So the psychology in a startup is so different than a big company, and that's why you very rarely see big company executives go into startups and be successful, because they just don't have it in their DNA. They don't think that way. So Many of you might be thinking about starting a company and being entrepreneurial. So here's the question. Do you have a great startup idea? And I see hundreds and hundreds of startups, usually 500 to 600 a year, sometimes more. So I see them all the time. And here's a series of questions that I ask them when I talk to them. I say, do you have an idea where you can't think of anything else? Like the first thing when you wake up in the morning, you start thinking about this idea. And at night when you're going to bed, you're laying in bed and you're thinking about this idea. And you just can't think of anything else. It consumes you. As opposed to having 2 or 3 possible ideas. So you have 2 or 3 things and you're not sure which one you want to do, and you're tossing them around. If that's where you are, you don't have a good idea. You have to have one idea that you're so passionate about and you can't possibly think of anything else. Then you know you're on the right track. The second question is, are you willing to quit your job and work for nothing for a long time? Because I've seen lots of people who say, well, I've got this idea, and if I can raise some money, I'm going to quit my job and go do it. No, that's not how it works. You have to be so passionate about the idea that you're willing to quit your job and stay totally focused on it and take the risk. If you don't have that much commitment and passion, you don't have the right idea. You're not ready yet. Another question is, have you experienced the pain point that you're trying to solve? So if I came up with an idea of fixing the insurance industry and doing some kind of risk analysis process on people and building these profiles and all this kind of stuff, I have no bloody idea how the insurance business works. I haven't worked in the insurance business. So if you haven't personally experienced that pain point and you don't understand what the dynamics of that market are, forget it. Don't do it, because you're gonna fail badly. Business is a lot more complicated than it looks. And if you haven't worked in that business and you haven't experienced that pain point, you're probably not going to be successful. Here's one earlier. There was a question earlier about single founders, and can single founders be successful? And the answer is very rarely. Single founders, starting a company is hard enough. It's a very difficult job. But trying to do it alone is nearly impossible, because you have to be good at too many things. And the question is, when investors look at a company with a single founder, they get nervous, because it usually means that your idea isn't good enough to convince someone else to drop what they're doing and come with you. And in starting a company and building a team, that's what you have to do. You have to be so passionate about your idea that you can convince people to stop what they're doing and join you in what you're doing. So if there's no co-founder there that's willing to come and join you, that's a big red flag that maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe you're a little delusional. And the last one is, will customers pay you? So if you haven't talked to potential customers, if you haven't experienced that pain before, if you don't understand what the customers will pay and what their alternatives are, don't start this business, because you don't understand enough. So those are a few questions to ask before you take the leap and start a company. Here's another golden nugget. Investors will only invest in people they know or businesses that they understand. So when you're trying to find investors, look through that lens. Filter for people who already know you, or filter for people who have been in this business before and understand the business. Because if you don't have both of those things, the chances that an investor is going to write a check are close to zero. So they've got to know you, or they've got to understand that business and have been in it before. So the startup funding sequence usually goes like this. And if you try to take it out of order, it rarely works. So the first level is your own money. So you've got to commit your own money and your own time to build a prototype and to refine your idea and get it to a level that you can explain it to people clearly and get to the next step, which is convincing other people to drop what they're doing and come join you. The second source of money is friends and family. So friends and family will give you money when no one else will. And if even your own friends and family won't give you money, that's a signal that this might not be a good idea. But you take that money and you get your co-founders and you get your minimum viable product and you sort of figure out the first steps of where you want to go. Once you've done that, then you can go to angels. And I'm not sure how it works in Poland, but in the US now, angels are really the Series A investor. So 10 years ago, you could go to a Series A investor, VC, without a product and say, give me the money and I'll build the team and I'll build the product, and then when we're ready to go to market, I'll come back and do my Series B. That's not the way it works anymore. Now, angels are taking over that area. So angel investors will give you maybe $1 million. Maybe, rarely more than that, but around $1 million. And with that $1 million, you have to build the product, launch it to market, and get some initial traction. Once you've done that, then you're ready to go talk to VCs about a Series A. And the Series A money, that can be $2 million, $3 million, something like that. And VCs are investing their money as rocket fuel, meaning you've already figured out what the product is. You've already built it. You've done your product market fit. You've gotten some initial traction. Now you're just going to step on the gas and really make it go. And that's what Series A has become and where VCs want to invest. One last piece of advice when you're looking for money: don't waste time trying to convince people that you have a good idea. Because people decide in the first couple of minutes whether they like you and like the idea or they don't. And if they don't really connect with you, and if they don't understand the idea in the first 2 minutes, another 30 minutes or 30 hours is not going to convince them, because it just won't work. So what you want to do is don't waste time with those people trying to evangelize and make them see it. Take that time and go to the next one. And you may have to go to 100 investors or 200 investors until you find those connections where when you see them start nodding their head as you're talking, that means, okay, yeah, they get it. Those are the ones you want to spend the time with. Don't waste your time with people who don't get it, because they never will. So I've worked in startups most of my career, and it's what I love to do. But the reality is that most startups fail. Most of them fail. But I've never met a single entrepreneur that thinks they're going to fail. And I've never met a single investor who, when they write the check, thinks the company is going to fail. I always tell my wife, I'm invested in over 30 companies myself, personally. And I always tell her that they all look great when you write the check. It's only a year or two later that you figure out if it's really what you thought it was or not. So investors are like that, entrepreneurs are like that. We're all taking a big risk. We don't really know. The reality of my investments has been that 50% of them fail and you lose all your money. It's gone. And you never know which 50% that's going to be. And I've been surprised many, many times. Experienced entrepreneurs that had done it several times, I thought, oh, great, this is going to work, good idea, and they fail. And then new entrepreneurs that have never done it before, and it looks like an insane idea, and they're successful. So as much experience as you think you have at doing this, it's almost Las Vegas odds when you're making these investments. But you have to go into it knowing that 50% of them are going to fail, but on balance, if you make good choices, the other ones will do well. 20% of them will break even. So if you make 10 investments Then 5 of them will be total wipeouts. 2 of them will kind of break even or maybe make a little money. 2 of them will return 2x or 3x your money. And 1 of them will do 10x or 20x or 30. And that's the one that you're looking for. In Ravi's slides, you saw that with, was it Matrix or Kleiner? 2 investments did all of the returns. And if you took those 2 investments out of that mix, they would have been not very good. So this is sort of the way it works. So if you're investors out there, my piece of advice to you is make many small investments. Don't make one big investment. So if you have a couple $100,000 to invest, let's say you have $250,000 to invest, I would advise you to make 10 investments of $25,000 each, not 2 investments of 125 or 1 investment of 250, because the odds are that you're not going to be right. So if you can spread your risk and spread your odds across 10 companies, you're probably going to do better. Here's another golden nugget. When you're facing failure, the toughest decision is if you push forward or pivot. That's the toughest decision that you will ever face. When things are not going well and things are not going the way you planned, do you continue to push forward or do you pivot to a new idea? And there aren't any easy answers to that, but you need to be open to the possibility that maybe you were off. Like the WD-40, they tried 39 times before they got it right. Chances are you're going to have to try a few things. You're going to have to pivot a few times. So entrepreneurs are very resilient and very determined, and they don't like to fail. They don't like to admit that they could possibly fail. But when you're faced with something like that, you're better off pivoting and trying 3 or 4 or 5 or 20 or 40 different things until you find one that works, rather than banging your head against the wall trying to make one thing work. So, the keys to success, to making a startup work. Ideas are easy. Everybody has ideas, multiple ideas. So that's not the hard part. The hard part is attracting a team to execute the ideas. That's the hard part. Building a minimum viable product, that's easy, really easy. The hard part is achieving the product market fit, doing those little pivots so that you've got a product that actually customers want. Raising investor money is relatively easy. If you've done those first 2 things, you've found product market fit and you've built a minimum viable product, then raising investor money is relatively easy. The hard part is generating customer revenue. That's hard. Getting money from investors, easy. Getting money from customers, much harder. So here's another nugget. Starting a company is easy. Building a business, that's hard. So it's never been easier in history. It's never been easier, never been less expensive to start a company. It's really easy, it's really cheap. There's lots of money out there. You can get started, you can start a company easily. Building a business and making it profitable, that's hard. So, now I want to talk about the mobile explosion. And this is a topic that's quite passionate for me. I've been in this business for almost 30 years, and I've seen 3 or 4 platform shifts. I wasn't in the business yet, but mainframes, IBM was the killer leader of all things. IBM was so dominant, you just can't imagine. They controlled everything. And it was inconceivable that IBM could be displaced by anyone, any company. But then mini computers came along, and my first job was with Digital Equipment Corp, and they were the mini computers. So there was Digital Equipment and Data General and Apollo, and there was this whole platform shift away from mainframes and onto mini computers. And then about 10 years later, PCs came along, and PCs totally disrupted mini computers. Now everyone had a PC on their desk. And then the internet came along. and sort of disrupted PCs, where a standalone PC wasn't really of any value. Things moved along. Then mobile came along. Mobile is the biggest platform shift I have ever seen in my life. It's happening faster than any of the previous platform shifts, and it's bigger than any of them before. It's totally changing the business. So I say the shift to mobile is bigger and faster than you think. We're all carrying smartphones, and we all know how to use them, and we sort of become lulled to sleep that it's just, obvious, but it's not obvious. It's happening so much faster than you can imagine. Last year, for the first time, there were more smartphones sold than there were PCs. So there were 500 million smartphones sold last year and only 350 million PCs. This year, in 2013, it'll be probably double that. There are 900 million Android phones in use today. 900 million. And 1.4 million, it's actually more than that, but I can't tell you how much more than that. But 1.4 million Android phones activated every single day, including Saturdays and Sundays. It's growing at just an amazing rate. This little chart here shows how the smartphone growth is growing, and the orange one there is the tablets. So PCs, that's the lower line there, they've started to level off and actually declining a little bit. Smartphones and tablets are taking off in a way that's just amazing. So when you're starting a company, if you don't have a mobile strategy, if mobile isn't a big part of what you're doing, you're going to be in trouble. So everyone saw this shift to mobile coming, and we understood that it was going to be important. But look what happened to the incumbents. So Nokia and Linux, they had a huge part of the market, huge. And they're not stupid. They're pretty smart guys. They've been around a while. But how could they miss so badly? How in 7 years could they go from dominating the market to almost out of business in just 7 years? It's staggering. That's what I mean about this is bigger and faster than you think. The people who are in this business didn't see this coming and didn't see how they were going to be disrupted. That little green section you see there, that's Android. Android didn't exist in 2007. It came out late 2007, early 2008, and just took the market by storm. And it's continuing to grow very, very fast. So it just gives you a little idea of how disruptive it can be and how fast it's growing. Here's another view of the global market share. iOS owned the market. They invented the market in 2007. Android came along in 2008, and now you can just see the way things are going. It's pretty amazing. Mark Andreessen wrote a blog about software is eating the world. Like software is taking over everything. There's software in your car, there's software in your phone, there's software in almost everything that we buy. Well, mobile apps are eating software. That's the transition that's happening. So right now, there are about 1.8 million apps in the app stores. And the iOS store, iPhone store, and the Android store are about the same, about 800,000 apps each. Microsoft is struggling, but they have enough money that they can pay developers to build apps. But this gives you a general idea of just how many apps there are out there. And when you compare the app business to the software business, it's staggering to think that there are 1.8 million different apps out there that developers are building, where the software business, there might have been 20 or 30 players, maybe. So it's just, the magnitude is unbelievable. 100 billion downloads of these apps. That's staggering to think about. 100 billion. It's a big number. And $10 billion paid out. So again, it's pretty even in terms of the number of apps. It's also pretty even in the downloads. Apple's app stores had 50 billion downloads. Google Play has had about 48 billion. Those trends are going to continue and get even bigger. Apple announced in their earnings, the Q4 earnings, that they had paid out $10 billion. Pretty large number. $5 billion just last year alone. So it's a staggering, staggering number, growing 100% a year. So this is an exploding business, and it's one that you need to incorporate in all of your plans. So one measure of how a business is doing or how a market is doing is the exits that happen. And it's amazing to think that there are these little mobile apps, little tiny little apps, companies built around them that are selling for $1 billion. So Instagram, I think, was the first one. Facebook purchased them for about $1 billion. It was $1 billion at the time they made the transaction. Waze is an Israeli company. Google just acquired them for over $1 billion. Snapchat, silly little app that takes 6-second videos, and they go away as soon as you can watch them once and then they disappear, they evaporate. They're raising money now at a valuation of $880 million, so just under $1 billion. And Path, another mobile-only app, is raising money now about $100 and $150 million at $1 billion valuation. So this is staggering to think about. These companies didn't exist 5 years ago. They're mobile only. They don't even have websites. Just a mobile app. Billion-dollar companies. It's pretty amazing. Another golden nugget. My advice to any young people today: become a mobile developer, or better yet, a mobile designer. Mobile developers and mobile designers make more money than any other kind of software developer. So if you have sons and daughters who are going to college, try to convince them to be a mobile developer or a designer. One more golden nugget. In business and in life, filter out all the crap and focus on the golden nuggets. If you can do that, you're going to have a happy life. So that's all I have for you, and thank you very much for your attention. This is my contact information, so you can contact me on email or on Twitter. So thanks a lot, and have a great day.